Good evening, everyone. I will be your host tonight, Mr. Dead Sleep. I'll be taking you through 3 scary stories from a couple different authors over at NoSleep on Reddit. As always, likes and subscribes are appreciated, and if you want to comment, please do. I'd love to hear what you have to say. But right now, just sit back, lay back, whatever's most comfortable for you, and enjoy. Our first story of the night is titled, I Found an Old Ruler in My Grandpa's Attic. It came with a list of rules. Are you ready? Here we go. I found an old ruler in my grandpa's attic. It came with a list of rules. I always loved to rummage around in my grandpa's old stuff. So many weird artifacts, old pictures, the odd war memorabilia that probably shouldn't see the light of day. He wouldn't let me keep any of the stuff though. But I could play up in the attic for hours, diving ever further into my own messed up fantasies. But that's before I found the ruler, and the rules of the ruler rules, as it were. It was hidden in a small chest, like a jewelry box. I hadn't seen it before, which I found extremely strange, since I was pretty sure I'd gone through just about every inch of that place. But there it was, centered on the floor, in plain sight. A small box inscribed with strange glyphs or what have you. I didn't think twice about it and opened it almost before my fingers reached it. To utter my dismay, there wasn't anything in it other than the old ruler and a dusty parchment, upon which some passages were written in plain English. I looked the parchment over suspiciously. Did the boring old ruler come with homework? That's like the worst treasure ever. I shrugged and started reading. Keep this on your person at all times or in the box it came with. Do not measure anything with it, especially not that. Important. If you chew on it, make sure to spit it out in tepid holy water, roughly 105 degrees Fahrenheit or thereabouts. Always greet your new friend under the bed. If you should forget any of these rules, place the ruler back in the box, post haste. Don't worry about the previous owner. They will be fine. Trust me. Just fine. What a load of old hooey, I thought. Although deep down it did intrigue me, I won't deny it. I'd been a sucker for weird stuff like this since Dan the dog told me about the no-front man, and for different reasons altogether, the zipper girl. Horror, mystery, scary stories, fucked up shit. What if this thing was real? I knew I was way too superstitious to ignore the ruler's rules, so I gently placed it back in the box and hid it under my shirt. I ran down the stairs and yelled a brief goodbye to my grandfather before I headed home to try and make sense of the strange old thing. I don't know how long I sat in my room just looking at it, inspecting it, admiring it. What had looked like nothing but a boring old ruler now appeared wonderfully sinister. All these strange, indecipherable markings were intriguingly foreboding. I researched whatever old forgotten languages and hippogriffs or whatever you call them I could come across, but not a single symbol even came close to the ones on the ruler. They were old, ancient, archaic, primeval, pragmatic, and somehow I just knew they had some power or other. But what? I tried waving the thing around like a wand, shouting, Adava Kadarva, at our stupid neighbor Travis, who insisted on blasting Venga Boys on his shitty boombox 24/7. But nothing seemed to happen. I sighed and just slouched down in my chair, gently caressing the ruler like a morbidly underweight puppy. Forget something? A wheezy voice called from under my bed. I fell off my chair from the shock, feverishly crawling towards the door as I realized what was going on. I'll let it slide this time, the seemingly disembodied voice said. But don't make a habit of it. Who are you? I stuttered. I'm the friend under the bed, it said. Didn't you read the rules? Oh, by the way, you should probably go comfort your mom. What? Was all I could muster. Why? Your dear old granddaddy is dead, kiddo. Like one of them doornails, it chuckled. Better go make her feel better. Wouldn't admit it was your fault, though. Not sure how sweet Mommy would take that. I quickly scrambled to my feet and threw open the door, running hysterically into the living room, only to find my mom sobbing inconsolably on the floor, gripping the phone tightly in her right hand. "Mom?" I asked. What's wrong?" "Oh, baby," she whimpered. "It's your grandfather. He's dead." I couldn't believe it. Some kind of twisted joke, surely. Pruny, middle-aged moms pull those all the time, right? Just a prank, bro, all like. But no, it wasn't. It was true. He'd been taking a walk soon after I left, up the trail to the Pronged Point, where he'd been mauled to death by a mountain lion. Weird thing is, it was the only registered mountain lion in the area to this date. Some freak accident. I tried my best to comfort my mom, but she was in total shambles. And I knew, deep down I knew it was all my fault. As I was sitting there, cradling my own devastated mother, a sudden realization hit me. The ruler. The ruler's rules. I didn't have the ruler on me. I threw my sobbing mom aside in a fit of adrenaline-fueled panic and bolted to the room, pouncing at the ruler still lying on my desk. I was mere seconds from putting it back in the box when I was interrupted. "Forgot something again?" the wheezy voice called. I turned around. It didn't come from under the bed this time. It came from my door. It came from the unsteady body of my mom, swaying back and forth in my doorway. Only it wasn't her anymore. She had this horribly warped smile on her face, and her lips were black like a demon's unwashed armpit. She held a kitchen knife to her own throat, and could spot a few droplets of blood trickling down her neck. Mom?" I asked sheepishly. "What's, going on?" "I ain't your mom, kid," it said. "But you know that. You messed up the rules again, bucko. Thrice now. Can't have that. Need to set things straight." It slowly started carving into the neck with the knife. I could see the droplets of blood multiplying, forming small streams as the knife made its way to the other side. "No!" I yelled and quickly grabbed the box from the desk. "Look, kid," it said, a suspicious hint of anxiety in its voice before dropping the knife to the floor limply. "I'll leave her alone, yeah? Bygones and all that, you know. Just don't put the fucking thing back in the box." "Screw you," I yelled as I rammed the thing down the box as hard as I could. Like magic, really dark fucking magic, I guess, my mom collapsed on the floor the moment I closed the lid, eyes rolling back into her head, all freaky-like. Not quite knowing what was the appropriate medical response, I resorted to dragging her to the living room couch and left her kind of hanging over the edge of it. When she came to a couple hours later, I explained to her that she probably suffered a mental breakdown because of all the stress or something. I never told her what happened. The truth, I mean, and I never will. Look, I don't pretend to understand anything that happened that day, but I know it all had something to do with that box, with that ruler, with the ruler's rules. My mom slowly recovered from all the weird shit, and things soon got back to normal. That's life, you know. But as soon as I got the chance, I buried that box. Deep, real deep. Well, as deep as I could manage, which I guess was about 20 inches or thereabouts. The years passed by, and eventually a great big bush grew over the box. I'm no bush lover, of the plant-like variety, I mean. But it had some pretty big leaves and always smelled faintly of week-old magazines left in the waiting room of a dentist's office. I don't know how that works, but there you have it. I suppose that's the reason why I'm writing this today. Nostalgia, I mean. Or an all-consuming sensation of unfiltered dread. One of the two for sure. I just want my story to be known. As a warning, perhaps. An epitaph of sorts, I fear. I woke up this morning and there was this big old hole in the ground where the bush once stood, and the box was nowhere to be seen. Okay, let's move on to our next scary story of the night. This one has to do with an online scavenger hunt. Here we go. I played an online scavenger hunt and the items I had to find got increasingly stranger. My day started by microwaving the T-bone steak that I'd left over from the night before. It wasn't the most exciting meal to begin the day with. A microwave steak probably isn't anyone's favorite food. I still was looking forward to it though. I microwaved it and placed it onto the table and only turned my back for a second to grab a knife and fork, but that's when my dog pounced. He jumped onto my chair, grabbed the steak in his salivating mouth before jumping back off the chair and running outside. I chased after him, but already most of the meat was taken off the bone and he was beginning to dig a hole, presumably to bury the bone. That's how my morning began. My breakfast getting stolen by the dog, and I hate to tell you, but my day only got worse from then on. At work, I got yelled at by my boss because of a small accounting error. I somehow typed in the wrong number into the computer and ended up losing the company $350. Now, I work for a large company, so I didn't think this would be too much of a big deal, but apparently my boss feels differently. After work, when I returned to my car, I found that my car had smashed a passenger window. At first, I thought maybe my car had been robbed, but I searched through the glove box and the back seat and couldn't find anything of value missing. I thought I might have had a comb sitting on the back seat that was now missing, but at least I still had my stereo and a $50 note that I had accidentally left in the glove box. You might think that my bad luck would end there, but no. When I got home, I checked my letterbox and found that I had an overdue power bill that needed to be paid in the next week. After the day from hell, I just needed to relax, so I decided that I would do what I usually do after a long, stressful day. I would go into my computer and try and find a new and exciting game to play. One of my hobbies is to play different games on the internet. I usually just play whatever fun game that I manage to find on the internet. The more challenging, the better. So I fired up my computer and began my search through the web to find a new and exciting game to play. I had already clicked through a few websites when I clicked on the website called amateurscavenger.com. It sounded interesting, and once the website loaded, a small window popped up that read, "Do you have what it takes to be the next amateur scavenge? Find all the items on the list and win a life-changing prize. Once you have won the scavenger hunt, you won't believe the person you can become." At this point, I was intrigued. Maybe I did have what it takes to become the next amateur scavenger. I clicked on the button that read, "Begin Scavenger Hunt," and once I clicked on it, it took me to another page. On this page, there were 3 options to choose from: easy, medium, or hard. Next to easy, it said that the prize was $100,000. Next to medium, the prize amount read $500,000. And next to hard, it said the grand prize was a staggering $1 million. Now I was very interested. This was indeed a life-changing prize if it was legitimate. I did have my doubts about whether or not the scavenger hunt would actually pay out like it said it would. I decided that I would play, as long as I didn't have to enter any bank details. Of course, being someone that likes a challenge, I chose to go for the grand prize, and so I chose the hard difficulty. Once I clicked on hard, it took me to another screen where I had to fill in basic details: my name, my phone number, which state I lived in, and what my fitness levels were like. I was a bit skeptical, but filled in all my details anyway. As soon as I had finished entering the details, I heard a small ding coming from my phone. I picked it up and saw that I had a text from an unknown number. The text read, "Welcome to the Amateur Scavenger. I admire your courage in choosing the hardest difficulty. If you are successful in finding all the items, you receive the prize amount of $1 million. A new you and a new life is only a few missing items away. Best of luck. You will receive further instructions on your first missing item shortly. Accompanying the text was also a photograph, and when I looked at it, it was a picture of a very large pile of cash, and in front of it was a small wooden sign that had my name and today's date written onto it. This is how I knew that the prize money was real, and it gave me a sense of excitement knowing that I may be able to win this amount. Nothing happened for a few minutes before I heard my phone ding again. It was another text, and this one read, "For each item you must find, you must send a photo of the item to this number. There may be some special items that require you to drop them off at a particular location that will be later specified. Once you have completed the list, you will win the money. Failure to find all items in a certain time limit will result in your disqualification. The first item you must find is one toothpick. You have 5 minutes." I read through the message, and once I read that, all I had to find was a toothpick. I thought to myself that this surely must get harder, because 2 minutes later, I had taken a photo of a toothpick I had found and had sent through a message to the unknown number. Almost immediately after I'd sent through the photo, I received another text, which read, "Congratulations, you have found one of the missing items. The next item you must find is a coin that is at least 30 years old. You have 10 minutes. At least this task is a bit harder, I thought, but it was still fairly easy. I managed to have the photo of a 37-year-old coin I found in an old piggy bank sent off within 7 minutes. This continued for the next few items. They would tell me what to find, and I would find it quickly. I had found a phone case, a chipped cup, and an unusual salt shaker, all with relative ease, and sent a photo of each to this number. Each time I had a little bit longer to find the item, but I managed to find them all well within the time frame. After I'd sent off the photo of the clown salt shaker I inherited from my grandma, I waited patiently for the next item to be sent to me. Sure enough, only a moment later I heard my phone ding again, and I read the text message I had received. "Congratulations, you are now almost finished with the scavenger hunt. Only a few more items stand in your way of $1 million. The next item you must find is the bone that your dog buried in your garden this morning. You have 3 minutes. As soon as I read this, I began to feel panicked. How did the game know about the dog bone? Had someone seen the dog take the bone? Surely not. How could they have seen? This didn't make any sense. I didn't really know how to react, but all I did know was that I only had 3 minutes to dig it up if I still wanted to win this money. I had a decision to make. Should I continue playing this strange game and try to win the money, or should I just stop playing now? After quickly thinking about it, I decided that I would keep playing. I tried not to think too much about it and instead headed out to the backyard. I looked around for a recently dug hole, and I soon found it. I dug through the earth with my bare hands, and only a few inches deep, my fingers touched a bone. I quickly pulled it up and saw that it was the bone from my steak this morning. I quickly took a photo of it and sent it off. I wasn't sure how long it had been since I received the text message, but I hoped it hadn't been more than 3 minutes. I soon received another message that read, "Well done, but you only just found that one in time. Try and be quicker this time because this is a special item. Your next missing item is 25 milliliters of your blood. You have 30 minutes to have the blood delivered to the post box that is at the end of your street. Good luck." After reading this message, I was very worried now. Why did they want my blood? Why did I have to deliver it to the post box? These were questions that I wanted answers to, but I knew I probably wouldn't get. I knew that I wanted the money, but did I want it bad enough to extract some of my own blood and place it into a post box for anyone to retrieve? I don't really know what led me to this decision, but I did decide to continue the game and to deliver the blood. I knew that I now only had 20 minutes to complete this task, and so I quickly went to the kitchen and found a small jar in one of the cupboards, and then went to a drawer and pulled out a small knife. I stared at the knife for a moment, knowing what I needed to do. I needed to make a cut on my finger and fill the jar with the blood that came out. The only thing was, would I be able to actually do it? I thought about the $1 million and decided that it was worth giving myself a small cut for that amount of cash. I psyched myself up and made a small incision along my index finger. Blood instantly began to emerge from the wound, and I managed to begin to fill the jar. I didn't really know how much blood 25 milliliters was, but I kept filling the jar until I was satisfied with the amount. I quickly pulled out some kitchen scales to weigh how much the jar was, all while being conscious of the time. The scales read 140 grams, and I was pretty sure that the jar would have been around 100 grams, so I was confident that there was enough blood in the jar. I quickly picked up the jar, screwed the lid onto it, and ran down to the post box. I probably only had a minute or two left now. On the way out of the kitchen, I managed to grab a tea towel to place around my still bleeding finger. I sprinted down to the post box, and when I got there, I quickly took a photo of the jar in front of the post box before placing the jar inside. Seconds later, I heard my phone once more. It was another text message. It read, "Good job. You now only have 2 items left to find. Please step away from the post box and return home. Once home, you will receive your next item." This is when I realized that someone was probably watching me. How else would they know that I was still at the mailbox, and how would they know once I returned home? I knew at this point that I didn't want to finish the game, but I wasn't sure if that was an option. I quickly walked back home, looking from side to side to see if I could see anyone, but I couldn't. Once I got home, I got inside, and as soon as I turned the key to lock the door, I heard the ding on my phone once again. I read the text message that I had just received. "Now that you are back inside, you can receive the next item. You must find a bruise on your boss's face. You have 12 hours. This one really perplexed me. Why would I need to find a bruise on my boss's face? I knew that he didn't already have a bruise, and so I knew that in order to complete this task, I would need to inflict one. I had already come this far, and with $1 million, I wouldn't need to work at that company anymore. This is what I found myself thinking as I was driving to work the next day. Could I really punch my boss in the face, though? I questioned whether or not I could, but deep down, I think I'd already decided that I could. I had left for work early that day and tried my best to arrive at the same time my boss did most mornings. I knew that he often arrived before most of the other employees, so I knew that if I was going to punch him, then this would be the best time to do. I pulled into the car park at my workplace and saw my boss's car already parked there. I pulled up next to his car and saw that he was still sitting inside the car. I unstrapped my seatbelt and hopped out of the car at the same time that he did. He saw me and greeted me with a nod and a smile. I didn't hesitate. I ran straight up to him and swung my fist towards his face. My fist connected with his nose, just below his eye. He dropped to the ground suddenly and blood emerged from his nose almost immediately. "What the hell did you do that for?" he yelled at me while he was laying on the ground, obviously in pain. I saw that his eye was already beginning to bruise slightly, so I quickly bent down, took a photo, and sent it to the unknown number. I then decided to get back into my car and drive off quickly. After driving for only about a minute, I heard my phone ding. I pulled over and read the text message. "Great job. You now have one final item to find. You must find yourself. You will be back at your workplace. You have 3 minutes to find yourself." I was very confused at this point. Find myself? What did that mean? Was this some sort of joke about self-discovery? Is this what it had all been about? I didn't hesitate though, and I soon had the car turned around and heading back towards my workplace. Once I got there, I saw that a few other employees had arrived and they were standing in a circle, looking down, horrified. Suddenly, I saw someone run out of the circle of people, and I saw that lying on the ground was my boss, a large knife embedded into his abdomen. Blood was pouring out into the concrete of the car park. This isn't what horrified me, though. What frightened me was the man that had just been running away. It was me. I knew that it wasn't actually me, but it looked exactly like me. They were wearing the same clothes as me, had the same haircut as me. They were my exact double, almost like a clone. Obviously, all the employees would have recognized that it was me, and so I quickly turned my car around and sped off, not wanting to be seen. Then I heard my phone. Ding. And without stopping the car, I read the text message. Congratulations, you have completed the amateur scavenger hunt. You managed to find yourself, and so your prize money will be delivered to you shortly. I hope it was worth it. And our last story of the night has to do with an old bedtime story. So here we go. I think my old bedtime story has a more sinister meaning. Every night, my dad was in charge of putting me to bed. He would help me brush my teeth and then would tuck me into my nice warm bed. Then he would tell me a story. Every night it was the same story. The story of Bosco and Billy. I had lots of books in my room, as my mother would read to me throughout the day, but Dad would never read any of those books. He would always tell me the same story. I always assumed that either the story had come from a book, but my father had told it so many times that he didn't need to read it from the book anymore, or that it was a story he was told as a child. I always enjoyed the story of Bosco and Billy. I always found that it would help me go to sleep. Usually, I would be almost asleep by the end of the story. I slowly learnt all the words to the story and would sometimes recite it with my dad. For some reason, probably because I heard it every night for years, the story stuck with me, and even to this day, I still remember all the words to the story. The story, in its entirety, is as follows. Billy the bear was an ordinary bear with an ordinary life, but he had a small friend named Bosco who got him into strife. Most of the time Bosco would behave, but sometimes he acted out. Billy tried to keep him in line, but sometimes he would break out. Like, one time Bosco was hungry and decided he would steal food. Billy tried to stop him and explain to Bosco that stealing is rude. But Bosco didn't listen. He stole the food anyway and took it to his secret spot and hid it away. Bosco took the food to the large oak tree that was in the woods. There he stuffed the food inside, and that's where he hid his goods. Billy never found the stolen food. It's still hidden there to this day. Bosco wishes that it was never found. He hopes and he prays. Billy is kind and Bosco is a little bit silly. And that is the story of Bosco and Billy. Now, the story seems innocent enough, and I always thought it was a cute little story about two bears. But after recent events, I now know it is a lot more sinister than it first appears. My dad passed away a few years ago, and it took a toll on all of us, my mom especially. She began a little bit reclusive after my father passed, and so I didn't see her as often because she shut herself off from others. I spent a long time trying to create a relationship with my mother again, and slowly, over the course of a couple years, I did manage to reconnect with her. Things weren't as they once were, but she did invite me over once a week for a cup of coffee. During these hour-long visits, we would sit in the kitchen and talk about times gone by, about my childhood, about my time at school, and about all the good times we had together. The one subject that didn't come up, however, was my father. I think the pain was still too raw for my mom to talk about him. On one of my weekly visits, though, I thought that I would try and mention my father, as I felt that it might do Mom some good to talk about him. I decided to mention the story that he would tell me every night. Do you remember that story Dad used to tell me before bed? The story of Billy and Bosco? I hesitantly asked, not knowing how Mom would react to the mention of her late husband. Mom looked up from her cup of coffee that she was drinking. She looked confused. Maybe because it was the first time he had been mentioned for a number of years, or maybe because she didn't know what I was talking about. "No, I don't remember that story," she replied. "You had a lot of books, so I can't remember all of them." I was a bit surprised by this. Dad told it to me every night, so I'd have thought that she would remember it. I then went on to explain that it wasn't a book. It was a story that he would recite without reading it off a page because he knew it so well. "I thought that your father would read you a different book each night," she said, sounding confused. "That's what he always told me anyway." I thought that this was especially strange because he never read me any of my books, and I would have thought that my own mother would have known this. "What was this story about?" she asked me. "It was about two bears, one named Billy and one named Bosco." I was about to continue to explain the story when my mom suddenly interrupted me. "Did you say the bear was named Bosco?" she asked me, sounding quite serious. "Yeah, that's right. His name was Bosco," I replied. "That's strange," Mom said. She had a look on her face that looked like she was trying to remember something. "Your father used to tell me about a friend that he used to have named Bosco," Mom continued. "He used to say that Bosco would get him in a lot of trouble when he was younger. I never met this Bosco, which your dad said was a good thing. He also said that he only met up with Bosco only once or twice after we met, and then your father told me that he was no longer going to see Bosco. He said that he finally got rid of him. I always was curious as to who he was. I've never seen any photos of him or any evidence that he existed now that I think about it. So it is strange that he told you a story that contained a character with the name Bosco." Mom stopped talking for a second and I didn't know how to respond. She then looked at me and asked, "Do you remember this story? Can you tell it to me?" I recited the entire story to her. She listened to the whole tale without changing her expression. She took it all in and then asked, "An oak tree? Are you sure that Bosco hid the food in an old oak tree in the woods?" "Yeah, it was definitely an old oak tree. Why's that?" I asked her, sensing that something wasn't quite right. It's just that on mine and your father's first date, he took me to an old oak tree that was inside the Shelton Woods, only a 10-minute drive from here," she responded. "He told me then that it was lucky for me that Bosco hadn't decided to interrupt their date." She then stopped talking and stared at the wall behind where I was sitting. "I think it's time for you to go now. I'm sorry," she told me, a hint of sadness in her voice. I thought that maybe it was for the best that I did leave. I got up and gave her a small hug, which she didn't even seem to notice. Then I collected my things and headed out the front door. I got into my car and began to drive home. On the way home, however, the thought of the old oak tree and Bosco began to fill my head. I couldn't escape these thoughts. I didn't know what it all meant, if it meant anything at all. I don't know what compelled me, but I had to visit the Sheldon Woods and find this oak tree. I turned my car around and headed in the direction of the woods. 15 minutes later, I found myself standing at the edge of the woods. I took a step forward and entered them. I didn't know exactly where this oak tree was, but I was determined to find it. I explored the woods for around 10 minutes before I saw it. Standing in front of me was a huge oak tree, its branches extending high up into the sky. I walked over to the base of the tree. A sense of fear started to overcome me. Something didn't feel right. It felt like something terrible had happened here. I looked down at the ground, at the base of the tree, and I saw that the dirt there looked slightly different than the rest of the dirt in the woods. I don't know why I did this, but I bent down and began to dig in this dirt. The police say that if I hadn't started digging, then they probably never would have found them. There were 4 bodies in total, all young women around the age of 24. All of them had been dead for over 30 years. It was undeniable. They were all murdered and buried under this tree. The DNA testing was also clear. My father was responsible for the killings. Somehow he managed to keep all this hidden for many years. He never told anyone. The only clues that he gave were through my bedtime story, which I think was his way of confessing. The only thing I'm not sure of now is who is Bosco. Maybe my father and Bosco are the same person, or maybe he really did have a friend with that name. I don't think we will ever know. I don't think I want to know. And that was our final story of tonight, everyone. I hope you enjoyed listening. I'll be back soon with a group of new scary stories, but in the meantime, if you'd like this video and subscribe, it would mean a lot as I'm trying to grow this channel. Once again, I am Mr. Dead Sleep, and good night.